Thank you for coming, everyone, to learn about my new supercomputer. For those of you who were here last time, you might remember I went through the process of what did I want my new computer for, and basically came up with there were a few things that I wanted to do with it. One was software development, server storage, and acting as a media server, some photo editing, and video editing, and the main thing I was going to do with it was some AI stuff. And hopefully tonight I'll get to the point where I can show you a bit of a demo of what some of the AI stuff, though I honestly don't know how to use it yet, because most of it's only been installed in the last couple of weeks, so I'm going through the process of learning all about it. But yeah, so all the bits. Had this case which I'd actually got first before everything else, because a friend of mine had bought it and then decided it was too big. So I bought it off him for almost what he paid for it. It's had quite a nice inside computer. It's got, as you can see, it's quite a large case, lots of space inside it, had fans and things, and of course lots of accessories, and it's sort of reconfigurable. So if you see here the way it came, this is how it came, with the fans already set, but the main part of the case was quite large. And if you look on the picture on the right hand side, there's a bit there where it's that vertical part of the case you can move backwards, which is actually what I did here. So eventually move that back so it would take discs, and this case will actually take 10 discs. Yeah. And the part of the reason for that was that I'd got two machines at home with RAID systems in, and I wanted to move the RAID systems over to it. Haven't done that yet. It's a bit further down the queue. It was going to be higher up the queue because, as I mentioned last time, originally Microsoft were planning to stop supporting Windows 10 in 2024, but we heard recently, I think it was sometime in October, they announced they were going to make it last till 2025. So got a bit of time before I need to actually do that bit of the job.
Do you want to just explain RAID 1 at least, just so everybody's understanding?
Well, the RAID systems I've got, it basically uses 4 disk drives, and they're in a mode called RAID 5, which means that if any of those disk drives fail, all the information that you need to rebuild that disk is already on the other disk drives. So they've got 2 or 3 disks in. One machine has got 3 disks in, and the other one's got 4. And basically, if one of those disks fail, all you have to do is pull it out of the RAID system, plug a replacement in, and then the software will rebuild that disk and replicate it. Yeah, so it's almost like a sort of a backup, but it's more of a parity, what we call parity, so that it can rebuild itself and keep another backup somewhere else. So.
And early versions of RAID was just simply one disk replicating the other.
Yeah, yeah. So in this case, you've got the replication spread over 4 disks. It's cheaper, basically, because I'm a cheapskate.
Yeah, no, I can appreciate it.
So yeah, on the main machine that I use at home at the moment, it's got 24 terabytes of hard disk space. So good place to keep all my pictures. And this thing is definitely going to need more space, and I'll tell you about that in a little while. So as well as the case, of course, I had the bits. Just to go quickly through them, there was a couple of extra fans. There was the cooling for the processor. There was the power supply. That's all the top at or some stuff at the top. In the middle there's an SSD and the Samsung SSD and the processor. And then on the bottom row, left to right, there's the memory, the motherboard, and the 4090 graphics processor. And so all the bits arrived, or rather I went down to Portsmouth to collect them from Novatech, because I didn't really trust the postman. But I also wanted to ask them some questions, and they answered my questions, and I brought the stuff away.
And of course, SSD stands for solid state drive, which is no moving parts, unlike a hard disk, which are generally unreliable over a period of time.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's all on chip almost.
So this was the motherboard. That was the first thing I got out to check, and looked to see whether all the bits were there and how it worked and things like that. This has 3 places. You can see those black bits on the left hand side,
Yeah.
vertical bits. They're actually heat sinks for SSDs. So this motherboard will take 3 SSDs.
Wow, that's directly connected, which is a lot faster.
Yeah. Yeah, heat sink it keeps it cooler. And at the top you can see that the power supplies for the main CPU have got heat sinks as well.
Nice board.
So that's the heat sink for the SSD. It's got a sort of squishy thing on, which is a heat transfer. I don't know what they call them.
It's almost like it's a solid, it's like a
conductive.
gel.
Thermally conductive. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that would work quite well on most SSDs as it is. But then I checked the SSD, and the first thing I found was that there's something slightly different about these SSDs. They are the fastest ones that were available on the market last October. I think there are others faster ones, but if you turn it on its side, you'll see there's a slight difference in the height between some of the chips. So the controller chips and the memory chips are a slightly different height. And I was expecting this by the time these things arrived, because I'd read on the internet that other people had had a problem with this. So that sticky, double-sided sticky thing on the heatsink isn't going to be the same pressure. It should be a standard pressure over the whole thing. So that could be a problem. So I had to go and buy an extra bit of sticky stuff to stick on it, these thermal pads. And I actually, because I didn't know what I was going to need until it arrived, I'd already ordered 3 different sizes of thermal pads. So if anybody needs any thermal pads, let me know, because I've got loads of extra ones.
Kevin, did you say the PSU is at the top?
On that first picture, yeah.
Oh, right. So have you moved it to the bottom or what?
Oh, in the machine, it's at the bottom, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
But it was just on that. I had it laid out on the table at the top.
Got it.
So basically, when I mounted the SSD in there, it goes in that in the space between the CPU and the first socket, and you can see it sitting there. But then I had to stick one of those thermal things on, just on that side of the SSD, so that it was level.
So your SSD, you're not SSD throughout. You've got SSD for OS drive, and then HDD for the rest.
Right at the moment, this thing only has SSD, so it's got 2 terabyte SSD in it.
Oh, okay, right, yeah.
I haven't put any hard disks in, but I plan to.
Yeah.
So what I'm planning to do is move that RAID system over that I've got at the moment.
Yeah.
At least that was my original plan, to move the RAID system. I might do it differently now. I'm still thinking about it.
Okay.
So that I had to mount the thing and then take the sticky off the heatsink, and then the heatsink goes on. You can see there, that's from a slightly different angle. You screw the heatsink down to make it fit. The next thing to do is check the power supply, and the power supply comes with various. This is what's called a modular power supply. quite a few computer power supplies have all the wires coming out, and so you end up with a huge number of wires inside your computer. This one's nice in that it's because it's a modular power supply, you can plug just the wires you need in. It means you end up with a lot of spare wires at the end, but you might need them later if you put more disk drives in, or you put more motherboard or add-on boards in or anything. But it makes the machine a bit tidier inside. There's a situation now with a lot of motherboards, especially AMD motherboards, because I decided way back I was going to go for AMD rather than Intel, and that is the BIOS.
Oh, sorry.
The BIOS needs updating, and this is especially true of AM5 motherboards, which this was. And so what you have to do is get a memory stick and download the BIOS on your laptop, and then put it into the motherboard. So one of the things that they recommend, and I would recommend anyway, is first of all setting up the motherboard with the power supply, and then testing it all out before you put it into the case, because once it's in the case it's a lot more difficult to do certain things. So at this point I set up the motherboard. You don't actually, in order to do this BIOS update, you don't on AMD motherboards actually need to put the processor in. You can update the BIOS on the motherboard simply by plugging in the thing into a special socket. So one of the sockets on the back of the board is marked as the socket that you plug the BIOS memory stick on. So if you boot it up without a processor, it will read the memory stick and update the motherboard BIOS.
Times have changed.
Pre-BIOS.
Yeah. Pardon?
Pre-BIOS.
Yeah, it's a pre-BIOS BIOS. Anyway, so I did that, and then the next step was to look at the processor. And these AMD processors, and the same applies to a lot of Intel processors now, the chip itself doesn't have any pins on it. It's just got a lot of little flat pads. So you can see this this CPU on the right hand side, on the second image, has got lots of pads, and the chip carrier on the motherboard has the pins which stick up. They've all got a little spring on, so when you put the processor into the hole, you can see the way it sits in the hole on the far right, but there's instructions there. Basically you have to drop it in exactly the right place, which means making sure that the little triangle, which in this case is on the top right hand corner, it matches the top one on the carrier, and then you bring the metal bracket down and push it over.
Anti-static bracelet as well?
I didn't.
Yeah, I think we got one over there.
I was holding it onto the case or onto the motherboard at the time. So
Strap down.
No, you can fry it with your
Yeah,
hands.
Or you work in a very damp environment.
Nylon socks. And
like this room. So that then you bring the metal bracket down and the little lever, which is at the bottom, and it goes just under that little thing on the right hand side.
Clamp it down.
To clamps it down, holds it in position. And then the next thing you have to do is put in the memory. You do that before putting the heatsink on, because in a lot of cases the heatsink will block you from accessing the memory slots. And if you look very carefully at this, you see that the two memory thingies or chips boards, they go in not next to each other, but you have to put them in particular slots. And in the manual it will tell you which slots to use, but basically if you're only putting two in on a motherboard that you've put four, you quite often have to put one in, leave a gap, and then put the other one in. So if you're building a PC, check that is the case.
how many gigs are you rocking there?
32 gigs.
Two,
Oh, sorry, 64 gigs.
Two
They're two
lots of
32 gig
yeah.
chips. Yeah. and the motherboard will take 128 gigs. And at some
You
point,
have to put them in pairs because that don't.
you have to put them in pairs.
Yeah.
Oh, and the other trick is when you're buying them. I think I mentioned before on the last talk, you have to buy the memory chips that suit your motherboard or your chip, CPU chip. So you'll see that the memory here says memory for AMD.
Yeah.
So although they're DDR5 memory, and you'll find a lot of places will sell you DDR5 memory, you need to make sure when you buy it that it's suitable for the sort of PC you're making.
Yeah, it's not
So if you're
twice for
using
silicon,
Intel
yeah.
chips, make sure you buy memory for Intel and not memory for AMD and so on.
Yeah.
Then the next thing is the CPU cooling, and I bought this Dark Rock Pro cooler. It was at this point I realised they'd give me the wrong thing, or
was
I'd
actually
ordered
a
the
rock.
wrong thing. It's actually it's got the letters TR4 on there, which I didn't know what that meant when I opened the box. But when I looked at it, I realised that the mounting brackets that they provided were completely the wrong thing, and it wouldn't fit. So I called them up and had a word with them, and they said, "Oh, you've got the one for the Threadripper chip rather than the AM4 chip, so or AM5 chip." So I had to take this back and get some different CPU cooling, unfortunately. So I had another trip down to Portsmouth to swap it over. So that added a day to the thing, but I got this. Unfortunately, they didn't have the one I wanted, which was I was really planning to get the same one, but with the different bracket.
It's nice stuff.
But I got the water cooling instead, which was slightly more expensive. But it's
Their plan is
surprising.
to send him away with the wrong one, and he comes back. Oh, we haven't got that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this one's got bright coloured lights.
Yeah.
Well, it's water cooled as well, which is
Yeah. So unfortunately, actually, this doesn't do quite as good a job. If you look at the thermal processing on this, it doesn't take away quite as much heat as the Dark Rock thing
but
that
it
I
looks
planned.
better. Mind you, it's inside a.
It's inside a black
Okay,
case
so
and you
sure,
can't
can't
see
it?
a thing, so I'm not worried about that.
Now have like is it perspex? They
Yeah,
have they have
I've got two with big windows
Yeah,
on them.
this case does actually come with see-through sides if you want to.
Yeah.
I could have got one with see-through sides.
Sorry, but you're saying Dark Rock. What is this Dark Rock?
The Dark Rock was the name of the cooler
Right.
that I was going to buy.
And it is a water cooler?
CPU
No, it's an air-cooled
It's
one,
an air cooled.
but it will handle 250 watts,
Okay. got it.
whereas this will only handle 160 or
Oh, goodness.
170
Right.
watts.
That's interesting.
So not quite as capable.
You'd think water cooling would be better, but it's not.
It's, in this particular case, no.
Yeah.
You can get a more expensive water cooler, but this was already more expensive than the air cooler, so I didn't really want to spend any more, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Oh, it looked nice though when you got the case open.
So this had the right bracket. That's what you have to do. You have to slide it into that thing on the side and remove the plastic cover. So there's a plastic cover on there which you can't see until you look very closely, but it's actually there and it has to be peeled off. The cooler for the CPU comes with a set of fans with it. So the fans have these longer screws. When you're mounting them at the top, I've mounted it at the top of the machine, and these long fans go through it. It's a bit awkward because you have to sort of hold the thing on and then screw the fans in and make sure the fans aren't moving about, because the fans the screws don't actually screw into the fans, they screw into the water cooling bit.
Right.
But the fans sit between the top of the machine and the top of the case.
So the fans are on the chassis, so you've got direct air intake from on this chassis for the
Yeah.
CPU cooled thing.
Yeah. And so yeah, you basically have to. You can see just there, just about see that the fan is next to the top of the machine, and the water cooler with the word MS, it says MSI on it, is underneath. So I had that line on here on its side, and
Microstar International.
Is that what it stands for?
I think so.
And then the thing was, it was still, the motherboard was still on the desk, sitting on top of its box, and the power supply on the desk, sitting on the desk next to it. You connect the power supply, and then you cross your fingers, touch a screwdriver on the links that are on the motherboard, and it starts the machine. It starts the motherboard up, so you can boot it up and see that it all works before you put it all in the case. So this was a bit awkward. It wasn't what I expected because I had to have the case on the table as well.
So this is
But
before you collect.
this
or
is
to
before
connect any
before I put anything into the
SSDs.
case. Yes. Well, no, the SSD's in there now.
Right, but
'Cause-
have you done this test before you put the SSDs on or not?
Do the test after I put the SSD on,
Okay,
because
got it.
my original plan was to put the air cooler on, and if you put the air cooler on, you can't actually reach the SSD once you put the air cooler on.
Right.
With the water cooler, it's smaller. It's a smaller head, so you can reach the memory chips and the SSD, even though. So then you're hoping to see that, which I did, which is the BIOS, but there's no operating system yet, so
Yeah.
just shows you the BIOS page, and you can see what fans are operating, if the fans are plugged in. At this stage, I don't think I had any of the fans plugged in. I might have had one plugged in. I think I might have connected the one for the water cooler. So, time for a cup of tea.
Right, said Fred.
So then the next step is to connect all the cables, and there are lots of cables to connect. It's got quite a nice arrangement in there with the cables that are along the top here, the connections for the power and the USB ports. But you have to connect the fans up, and there's inside this motherboard case there was a fan thing, which allows you to drive lots of fans off a single driver. The trick is, at this point you have to consult the manual, because there's lots of separate wires coming from the LEDs on the front panel and the start button, and they all have to be connected in the right place. So you need to get your glasses out and look very carefully at the motherboard and see where all those connectors are. They're all in there's a sort of little diagram there at the top showing you that connector's in the bottom left hand corner of the motherboard.
Okay.
So now we could go and mount the motherboard in the case, start connecting everything up. And then once everything's in the case, the thing is, we need an operating system to do anything useful. So get the laptop out again, and then create another memory stick, and put Windows 11 setup media. So you can go to the Microsoft website and do that. Put Windows onto a memory stick. And it takes quite a while for it to download and do that. And then you can boot up the machine again, put the memory stick in, and it will put Windows on there. So the next step was to put the video card in.
Sorry, can I ask a quick?
Yeah, of course.
Do you have to buy this version of Windows?
You do have to buy it.
Yeah.
And you buy it online? No, sorry.
To be honest, you can install it without buying it, but then it will complain like hell all the time.
Yeah, you get a month or something, don't you?
Yeah, you get a month's grace, during which time it writes things all over your screen saying you're doing bad things.
Okay.
But eventually, you have to pay one way or another.
Some places will show you an OEM version.
Well, I bought an OEM version,
Yeah,
and it was something like 30 quid.
Yeah.
So it's a lot cheaper to do
I
that.
bought OEM versions of OSs, of Office 19.
Yeah.
Got 4 versions run Office 19 running at home. So.
I just ran Linux.
So yeah, I would recommend looking for an OEM version, because it works perfectly all right, and doesn't
you
seem
need
to
a
be.
computer to create a computer, because you need the
You do.
nurse computer.
You
There's
do.
a-
Back far
for
enough, there's a
everything.
ZX81 there.
Somewhere, yeah. So then, as I said, the next step was to do the video card and then download the video drivers. Oh yeah, sorry, I missed a bit out. One of the previous steps when I was talking about memory, it's quite a lot further. Much earlier on, when I downloaded that BIOS, I had another memory stick which I had the drivers on for the OS as well.
Right.
That were suitable because I wanted to make sure I had all the drivers. In fact, when I installed Windows, it was here and connected to the network here. It managed to find all the drivers it needed at Microsoft without me needing to put that memory stick in. But it's useful to do that in advance because not all motherboards will be able to do that first time round.
Yeah.
Especially annoying if the network driver it doesn't find. But luckily it found the network driver and so it could download everything off the internet.
Sorry, are there heat sinks on memory boards?
There's a
certainly
heat.
can get them. I don't know if you've got one.
I just wonder whether you put heat sinks on them.
The memory I bought, the RAM, had heat sinks already built
Okay,
into it,
right.
Yeah.
so
Okay.
I didn't need to put any.
Get an extra.
Usually nowadays, you'll find that faster memory has the heat sink already. If you buy slower memory, it might not need a heat sink and you won't have it.
On my very rapidly aging rig at home, I've actually got 3 fans which are mounted onto the memory as well. So
Presumably the same applies to the graphics card. That's got its own heat sink and fans.
Yeah, the graphics
yeah.
card has it all as it's
All built in.
integrated.
all built in.
Okay.
But some people do buy another water cooler and put it on the graphics card. I'm waiting to find out if I really need to do that.
Which is why you shouldn't buy second-hand graphics cards.
Yeah.
They've probably been overclocked.
Yes. Yeah.
So then that's with the graphics card installed and Windows running and everything was running nicely then. The only problem was with the graphics card is it's quite heavy and it's quite big. So I decided it would be nice to have a bracket. Now they do provide a bracket with this graphics card, but it was a bit wonky and a bit rubbish. So I decided I was going to make my own. So I went to Wix, bought a piece of this aluminium angle, the one on the right, £4.21, and I made a bracket. So luckily there's some screws in the end of the graphics card on the heatsink, which or some things already. So I just lined it up, measured it very carefully, lined it up, and made a bracket. And then and you can see on the right hand side I painted it black so that it fits in quite
When
well.
you get your window in your box.
Yeah. And then that's basically the whole thing. I'm going to show you take some bits off the machine and show it to you before I.
What do you have to do immediately after installing Windows 11? Is it turn off all the spyware?
Yeah. And remove all the junk. A lot of it's they're talking about removing junk if you'd installed or if you'd put it off a disk which was from some other supplier. They often put a lot of junk software. Well, even Microsoft put quite a bit of junk software now.
Yeah.
So there are a couple of, as I said, couple of makerspace bits that are not usual. One was this nice little bracket that I found online, which holds all my cables. Because the thing I found, one of the other things I learnt when I was building this was that need for check your cables, your USB-C cables. Yeah. I hadn't done that with my previous machine, and when I checked them, it's one of the reasons why I sort of changed slightly how this machine's going to be used, because I realised that by buying new cables for my old machine and getting rid of the USB hub that I was using, I speeded it up quite a lot already.
Yeah.
So anyway, this was a nice thing. I made 2 of these, one for this machine and one for the old machine. And so this is what the machine looks like inside. You can see it has got some nice flashy lights. I haven't actually connected the lights for the cooler at the top. That's sitting there. This machine's quite good in it. It comes apart. You can take bits off it. but you can see the space there for the discs at the front, which will be there eventually. Power supplies at the bottom. I can.
Good, so very accessible.
It is very accessible. You can see the cooler now it doesn't go out over the sides, so you can get to this area where the SSD is. There are two more SSD slots which are empty, and they're underneath the graphics card. So I would have to take the graphics card out to put any of those in. So and then because I'd gone for this other arrangement for the cooler, I didn't need all the fans. I bought 2 extra fans. I put one extra one in the front here, and the other one, it's actually gone in my old machine, so it's cooled that down a bit more.
There's obviously a whole science around airflow within the case, isn't
There is, and I decided. Originally, the case was set up, and on the assumption that air would come in the bottom,
Yeah.
and go out at the back, and would also come in the top to cool the CPU, and come in the front to cool the discs. What I decided was I wanted to do positive air pressure in the hope that it won't fill up with dust quite as much as my old machine does.
Right.
So I've changed this. So instead of blowing out at the top and blowing in at the top, I'm blowing out at the back here and in at the front. And there are 3 fans at the front blowing in. So the places that are blowing out, it's going to come out at the bottom a lot. So hopefully the dust won't collect quite so much
I
dust.
think you're right as well, and also having a ingress at the top, dust is obviously floating down. I think coming in at the side is
and
expel at the back is a good.
And the nice thing about this machine is it actually got removable grids, so you can easily take it off. When I brought it to the makerspace here today, I was able to give this a shake and get rid of all the crumbs that have fallen into it from lunches I'd eaten since I'd started.
It's amazing how much dust you get in there, especially if you're in a room, you know, that you sit in.
But there you can see there the fans are at the top, and they're at the moment set to go to suck air in at the top. And the case actually comes with 2 lids. It's got this one which has holes in 4, so you can suck air in. It's got a completely covered one as well, if you decide not to have the fans at the top.
Good. And the fans, they've got LEDs on them, presumably.
They have got LEDs on, but I haven't plugged them in
Yeah.
because I don't really want them lit up.
Looks nice.
I just find it distracting.
Mine's all orange. It looks like it's sort of on fire.
Yeah, well, I don't know what
Sometimes it
this.
is.
I like if there's a fire in my machine, I like to know. And so
His house is painted blue and yellow stripe.
in my previous machine, it did catch fire at one time. So it was nice to know when flames were shooting out, they were real flames and not just.
What were you doing
Something
with it
correct.
to make it catch fire?
The power supply exploded. I was just doing normal everyday work, and it just something caused it to explode.
Yes, the smell of
Flames
burning
shot out the
silicon.
side, which was a bit shocking.
Choose one of plastic. You put a fuse in it. Right away.
Nice, that's very
With the
good.
electricity, it's used to go on.
So we're all right for the video, yeah. So one of the things that I have done with this machine already is, hang on a second. So I had a chance to install some of the AI software, and just thought you might like to see.
Is that your back garden, is it?
Yeah, I swear. It's a place near Lake Garda in Italy, but
Yeah, your back garden.
Riviera.
it's my mate Colin's back garden actually. But anyway, So let me just find the right thing
Careful with
here.
your photography collection, it's got a mixed audience.
So I need to make this a bit smaller for this other monitor, don't I? So, hang on a second.
Is that like a 1080p monitor? Like
I think it's
four-
I think it's a 720p
Yeah.
monitor myself.
it's retro.
Let me make this smaller.
Which one? Oh yeah.
So, yeah, it's still nowhere near the right sort of size. So this is a bit of software called Comfy UI, and what I need to just make sure this machine is on rather than asleep. It's fell asleep because I've not been using it. It is lighting up, look, when you get it
That's
going.
nice though. Yeah.
I've got a keyboard on the same basis. Put her one as well.
You
You
wanna-
like the pretty lights.
You want to spring for a window for it as well and get it all lit up.
I don't really, because I'm never going to see it. This is against the wall in my house. So.
It's only to impress people when they come round. You can turn it off most of the time.
You know, you could have a screen here that just emulates the fact that it's
So-
a working PC.
So that's back on again, so hopefully. So this is how OBS, how Comfy UI works. It has these workflows which you can use to run an AI model that draw pictures for you. So this has currently got thing that a piece of text in that says beautiful scenery, nature, glass bottle landscape, purple galaxy bottle.
Oh.
So if we were to run this, it should generate a picture that represents that, and then it would show it over here. Now I'm not 100% sure this is working. Oh, it is working. The green bit shows you which bit's working at each time, so you can see it's gone through, and
This is running on your new machine over the network then.
it's
The IP
yes,
address,
it's
yeah.
running on this machine, but I'm doing it on here just because this is on there on the screen and OBS is reading it. So you can then change the thing. So if I say a cat in a top hat and hit cue the prompt again, it'll generate a cat in a top hat. And if I want lots of cats in the top hat, you can go and change the parameters that it's using. You can see it's got here in the K sampler, it's got a seed. It's set to go to increase the seed every randomize the seed. Sorry, it's got it set to.
So the higher the number, the more variation.
No,
right?
well,
Or is it like-
it's just a number. It's just like something that generates a random number to. You can fix what you can do in here is you can say, okay, I want to fix this number, or I can increment it every time. If I set it to increment it, and then I just want to come back over this way a little bit. The other thing that's going into it is the pruned model, and we can set the width and height and the batch size. I'm just going to increase the batch size, so this means it's going to create 4 cats at a time every time I hit.
Oh, I
cue
see,
the prompt.
Right, okay. Full
So-
variance. Is that-
Yeah, so it will create 4 separate cats. So you can see now. So I was quite pleased at how fast it's generating cats.
Yeah.
And I mentioned I was
Well,
watching
worth
this.
the effort then, wasn't it, for
Yeah, well,
generation,
yeah, it generates. It's generating an average of basically 20 cats a minute.
Was this your idea to find cats with hats? Or-
Yes, it was. So it will.
It's not finding.
it's making them.
These never existed, these images.
So these are AI images.
Yeah,
All
they're
AI generated.
all AI generated images.
Yeah.
So every time you hit Q prompt, it will generate another 4 AI images. And there you go.
So a quick question. If you wanted to say generate a picture of a barn, could you then get different pictures of the same barn from different angles?
This is
Yeah.
very difficult to do actually.
Yeah, because they like it's always like a different one, or yeah.
Yeah. There are ways to do it, but it's not trivial.
Yeah.
So you can't quite create a virtual world and then move around it in the AI, and it does all the
You
colouring
can
in.
do it, but it's not done with the nice thing about Comfy UI. You can see it's got all these different boxes, and you can move them around. You can add more boxes, and if you want to do that sort of thing, then adding more and more boxes is the best way to do it.
Where did it go for the database of chat?
This is in the model,
All right, so it's already in there.
so it's what the model's been trained to do.
It's already been scraped off the internet.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so-
just
It's learnt all about what cats look like and what top hats look like, and it's put them
and
together.
this will be used. I mean, this will
So
be
you
out
have to
in the
essentially
wild.
you have to
probably,
download
isn't
the
it?
database with the...
You download the model,
Yeah.
which has been trained on what cats and hats and things look like. So.
But going back to the getting a consistent image, I think they call it persistent characters or something like that.
Yeah.
And where you can
Consistent characters.
say again, sir?
Consistent.
Consistent, right? And that way you can actually create an AI cartoon-esque character and have it in the full comic book style, where you can actually see this character in all sorts of different
or even
positions.
just background scenery, and
Yeah.
then you want to see the same place but in a different angle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've
yeah.
never seen now. Yeah.
And now that's like the holy grail of.
Yeah, but you'd have to do that as a 3D.
Do another one of these as another style. Yeah.
You need to do that as a 3D.
So once I've learnt how to use this properly, I'm planning to do another talk about this probably in 2 months' time.
Yeah,
I'll be picking your
fantastic.
brains about it then, when the dummy can't do it.
So thank you very much. That's it.
No problem, thank you. Just
Splendid.
give me a round of applause. There we go. Give you much.
Oh yeah.